All right, everybody, we are live again. Dynasty Mirror Search for Uhuru, and I have the beautiful sister with us, Nangula, all
Yes.
the way from Namibia. And I know a lot of you guys. I've been covering a lot of what's been going on in South Africa in regards to land reform, and I know a lot of you guys have been touching on. Why don't you cover what's going on in Namibia? Because there's a lot of unrest. I mean, it's like it's boiling in Namibia around that currently because Namibia, you went through the apartheid system too, correct?
Sure, yes. Now, the apartheid system started in 1948 in South Africa with the National Party, which was an all-white political party in South Africa. So it was geared around the policy of racial segregation and a system of that is called apartheid. So Namibia, South Africa then co-opted its apartheid system to Namibia in 1951 as well.
Okay. Now wasn't correct me wrong, Namibia and South Africa were all one at one time, correct?
Yes. Namibia and South Africa, not necessarily. South Africa has always been South Africa. Namibia was previously known as Southwest Africa. So it was, they were both under the same regime, which is the apartheid system, but they were not necessarily one country, so to say, although they were ruled under the same apartheid system, which is a system that was rife with racial segregation, separation between whites and blacks, that forced blacks to live in separate neighborhoods from the whites, and even for blacks to use separate public facilities from what the whites are using. Yes.
Okay. What I was going to ask, goodness, I'm just reading some comments in the chat room. So now, what was the difference? Well, Namibia is really different because I know you guys had the Germans who came. You guys had the genocide of the
people. Yes,
right,
people, yeah.
And then also too, from my understanding, a lot of Germans from after World War II from Nazi Germany came to Namibia too. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about that, but what I know is that the Germans came to Namibia in the early 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they started to colonize Namibia around 1800, 1900s, around there, taking over or dispossessing the indigenous people of Namibia of their land. And basically wanting to wipe out the communities that they have came in contact with, especially the Herero people and the Nama people of that were mainly people that lived in the southern part of Namibia. So yeah, that's what I have to say about the Germans. And unfortunately, we still have like a large number of Germans here in Namibia who still own pretty much of the land that was dispossessed of our own people by their ancestors.
Now, do you guys have the same issue in Namibia as in South Africa, where the minority, the white minority, owns the majority of the land, like in South Africa?
Exactly. So the statistics that I have here is that currently in 2018, we do have out of the 100% of the Namibian population, the whites comprises of that percentage comprises of like 6.5% of the white people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can imagine around independence, if we have 6.5% of white population, and at independence, white people, predominantly like commercial farmers, I think they were at the population of like 3,500 or 4,000 people owned 50% of the arable land in Namibia.
So when did apartheid end in Namibia? Or technically on paper, when did it end?
Yeah. So when it ended technically on paper, it was in 1990. So it was 28 years ago, if we can say so. Yeah.
All right. And so after it ended, what was the black or the indigenous people, the black people, what were they promised, I guess?
Yes. So this is what happened. So our kind of what we call apartheid resistance leaders who took up armed resistance with the white South African army when they got in power under the leadership of SWAPO. They started to kind of come up with policies that promised people who were dispossessed of the land, or just so to say, the general Namibian blacks, promising them that they would resettle those who are without land, and they'll try to expropriate, and not necessarily expropriate. There's a terminology that they were using under the policy of land reform, where there was a policy of a seller, willing buyer, where they expected the white people to sell back their land to the government, and then the government redistribute the land to the landless, especially those that were dispossessed of their ancestral land, ranging from the German era up to the South African apartheid era as well.
Now, has it been successful? The land reform, has it been successful at all, or is it still?
Unfortunately, it hasn't been successful. So it has caused a little bit of how should I say, like this displeasure among the people, especially those who felt like they were promised all these promises and they were never met. So some people then started to organize themselves, for example, to form some sort of like interventions where they could unite with each other, especially geared around tribal means, so that they can sort of try to generate like a particular sense of consensus for land to be addressed, or for them to get back their ancestral land. Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you think there's some tensions in some parts of how is it in Windhoek? Like, I mean, is a lot of the land black owned? Are the businesses black owned? Like, what's the situation in Windhoek? When I was in Windhoek, I wasn't there for that long.
Yeah.
The majority of my time in hold on. Goodness, where did I spend my time?
Is the Himba people in
Puwo?
Yeah. Puwo, yes.
And on Dingwa. That's where I spent the majority of my time at. But
yeah.
How is it in Windhoek right now? Like, is there any tension, or, you know?
I wouldn't really say there's tension, but there's something is happening, because what you are hearing is there's been a dialogue on equitable resource distribution.
Mm-hmm.
It is called, there's a specific term that the president has been using where he wants to address that inequalities in terms of wealth and privileges that have emanated from the apartheid system, where you had whites gaining much more advantages over wealth acquisition. So what they want to do is to try to work with apparently with white people to have blacks own stakes in predominantly white owned businesses, so as to apparently address that situation of wealth inequalities. Because our situation in Namibia is that you get to hear a lot that we are an upper middle income country, but what is not mainly usually discussed around that is that out of that, as much as we are so to say apparently a wealthy country, the wealth is in the hands of the very few, and those very few are the minority, which is the 6.5% whites, unfortunately, and that is like an inequity that is inherited from the apartheid system and colonial oppression as well.
Well, so how do you guys feel about the government, current government?
Excuse me?
How do you guys feel about the current government?
I don't know, but for me, I just feel like personally that the African leadership somehow it's just somehow like a
compromise.
Yeah, it's compromise. That's what I want to say. So you find that most of our leaders are trying to pacify the dominant system or the powerfuls and so on. They are not necessarily wanting to address issues because you're trying to avoid making other people uncomfortable. So that's how I feel. But I tend to meet other Namibian youth who feel differently about our current president, but I don't necessarily want to make a separation between the overall current African leadership, which is just like really a disappointment. So that's how I feel. Personally, that's how I feel.
Let me ask you, do you know about the AME Church and the role they played in the liberation struggle in March of 1990?
Which one is that?
The AME Church. Are you familiar with the AME Church?
Oh, where is that?
It's in Namibia.
In Namibia.
Yeah, it's a church that was started by Black Americans, and they're pretty much all over Africa. And someone in the chat is saying that they played a role in the liberation struggle in March of 1990. I didn't know if you were familiar with that at all.
Oh, okay. But what I know for sure is that there has been so many people across the world who've been voting for us and vying for our freedom and vying for South Africa to give us back our lands, to give us back our territory. So I know, for example, that there are some people in the United States, like some people who have organized themselves to try to protest to say free Namibia all across the world. So it's probably one of those friends of Namibia who felt like we needed our liberation as well. So I don't necessarily know specifically about that church, but what I know is that we've had so many friends who were vying for our independence when we were busy with our the struggle of our independence. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Davis, Professor Davis is also asking, are you familiar with Hendrik Witbooi?
I know about Hendrik Witbooi. Those are some of our ancestors that are known for their bravery to stand up against the oppression and colonialization by Germans, for example. So he put up a resistance, like an army resistance, to fight off the Germans, because they when they were trying to co-opt our land from our people. So he's a well-known figure, an icon in the Namibian liberation struggle, and he's one of the pioneers who is one of the people who have started with the resistance in the southern part of Namibia, and he's a Nama, a leader of the Nama people in the southern Namibia.
Okay, what's been the major difference between the end of apartheid in Namibia compared to South Africa? What do you think will be different? Like, no,
I didn't get that.
Like what major differences have you noticed? I mean, because you border South Africa, in regards to the end of apartheid in Namibia versus the end of apartheid in South Africa.
Okay, so what have I observed? And
like what differences do you notice? Like, what's different?
The difference that I've noticed with South Africans is that they are much more open to call a spade a spade. Okay, so you'll see South Africans trying really to fight these institutional remnants of apartheid system. Like recently, you've been hearing about the student protest against the education system, for example, and just trying somehow to dismantle the remnants of apartheid in institutions, and including in educational institutions, for example. But for us in Namibia, I feel like sometimes we are too much apathetic, and we are not as much as fired up as South Africans are doing. Which I guess maybe has to do with our institutional memory, for example. But I see that people are starting somehow to cause a little bit of discomfort, but I just feel like we just don't want to cause some discomfort. And I think all this is probably because of all this stability and peace that we've been fed with by our politicians, to say Namibians are peaceful, we have stability and so on. But what I know is that there are so many things relating to apartheid and all that history that people don't really want to talk about, but they are there and they are causing discomfort for us.
Yeah, somebody in the chat room says Namibian people are a peaceful people. Namibians want to do it without bloodshed, sweet but naive.
Yeah, I would say that, which is I don't think it works for us. Probably it does in some ways that we have that peace and stability, which I sometimes feel like it's a way for especially for our politicians to keep us from making them uncomfortable in a way. I would rather we are calling a spade and spade and causing discomfort so that we can deal with all these remnants of apartheid that is definitely going to haunt us for some years if we don't start talking about it, if we don't start calling it out, if we don't start dismantling it.
And from my understanding too, a lot of the apartheid regime from South Africa after apartheid came to Namibia. Is that true?
Of course, this one was one and one system. So like we all know, this is one system that was based, rooted in racial segregation and in white supremacy. That's one thing I would say. So it's no different from what has been going on in South Africa or anywhere else where white people tried somehow to kind of look for ways on how to achieve and maintain power over others. All right. So it's in a way it's one system and one system. Of course, this was perpetuated by the Dutch people who came to South Africa, but I think it's something that is rooted in the cultural asili, cultural seed of the white people, for them to maintain power and dominance over people who don't look like them. Yeah.
So pretty much the government is just kind of just there just to tolerate it and not really instigate or make. Pretty much the government doesn't want to make white people feel uncomfortable.
Are you talking about the current situation now?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Pretty much the government doesn't want to make white people uncomfortable.
Of course, that's how I feel like, and I feel like most of the time our leaders really what they're trying to do is trying to pacify the white people. On the one hand, I guess because as Africans we have now, especially in Namibia, what you realize if you go to other African countries and come to Namibia is that we are much more Europeanized compared to other African countries.
Very. I would say that
which goes to say that we have adopted the system, the very system that kind of oppresses us at the same time. You get me? So then it gets to a point where you don't want to fight the same kind of system that feeds you, obviously. Right. So in a way, our leaders are pretty much scared because they have co-opted into that system of dominance. And also what I realize is that our African leaders are now becoming also part of the oppressors, because they are also much more wealthy, like the white people. So it means if you dismantle that specific dominant system, you have dismantled their wealth as well, in that sense.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, because I'm reading an article, and I mean, they're saying that, you know, a lot of people are demanding land reform in Namibia. I'm just trying to figure out how that would look like. And then some people are saying that also they were suggesting that they get compensated, the Europeans, but compensated for what? Like, do you think they should be compensated?
Now there has been recently, like the people who are part of the communities that were almost exterminated by the Germans, like the Herero people and the Nama people. What they have done is organize themselves, and what they've been trying to do is trying to get our government somehow to negotiate with the Germans so that they get some sort of reparations for all because their ancestors were exterminated. Some of them were moved into the desert and they all perished there. Some were pushed into Botswana. You have some Herero people who are now living in Botswana. So I guess what they're trying to say is that, more or less the same thing as the Jewish people were given reparations. So they also want to be given reparations. Not necessarily, I guess, to make up for what happened, because no one can go back to that and try to undo what has happened. That is like a scar in our memory that is going to be there forever. So with reparations, I don't necessarily know how I feel about it. But I just wished that all these what we are trying to talk about, that memory in our mind, the memory of the genocide, the memory of colonization, the memory of apartheid, for us as Africans, could teach us who our enemies are, for us to see our enemies for what they are necessarily, you know, and not necessarily trying to somehow try to get reparations for it, because I don't know if it's ever going to change our relationship between the whites, blacks aspect in that case, or to make up completely for what they have done to us.
Somebody was asking in the asking the chat room, so do whites pretty much control the economy like in South Africa, in Namibia? Is it similar?
Yes, pretty much so. If you come around, you will see that most of the industries and economic activities are white owned. Yes. Okay. And like I said, even with the land, commercial land, trying to make money out of land, wildlife, and all sorts of things. So of course, yes, it's not different in a way. It's the same. And that's why with our inequalities, like when you talk about the inequalities, it's because much of the wealth is owned by the white people, and the white people are the minority in Namibia.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's asking, are you familiar with the San people? San people?
Of course. Where I grew up, I grew up with the San people. There are San people in Tsunkwe. There are San people all over across Namibia. Yes, I know about this.
They're asking, what do you think the future of the San people are?
Oh, that's a sad reality, because unfortunately the San people coming in contact with either the predominant fellow Black people, like the Bantu people, because the Bantu people are agriculturalists, subsistence farmers, and like what you know is that the San people are mainly people who are nomadic people. They don't necessarily come to a place and try to set up agriculture, for example, or cultivate the land and stuff like that. So what has what that has led to is for some people to be really, really marginalized, which is an unfortunate a thing to see. So when you go around, sometimes you see how really they've been reduced to just a marginalized people, because on one hand there is a conservation of areas where they used to frequent around doing hunting and gathering of fruits and so on. And after those areas were converted to conservation areas like national parks, it means that they cannot go ahead and live their way anymore, for example. So what you find is that they are reduced to smaller areas, reduced to people just there who are being servants of the Bantu people sometimes, or just people wandering around and not having much to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I already asked that, D-Flash, but I'll ask again. Do Germans own more land than the Namibians themselves?
What I know is that white people own more land than Namibians themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
So we'll just say,
yeah. Because I wouldn't separate the Germans from the rest of other white people.
Right.
Because what I just said here is that we have close to 4,000 Namibians out of 2008, 2.5 million people, who owns about 50% of the arable land in Namibia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think, as far as for Black people, what do you think the future holds for Black people in Namibia on the rate you guys are going? Does it? I mean, is the outlook good, or like what are your thoughts?
I think if we like what I want to say is that our demise, the demise of Black people, lies in Black people not having a strategy or like a vision for themselves, mm-hmm. and being able to be in charge of what they want to achieve. That's what I want to say. So I think if Namibian people, like you can see a bit of an energy of a few people coming together, like we have the people who have organized themselves, who are descendants of the ancestors who were disposed of their land by colonialism, and these people are coming together and they are organizing themselves and they are trying to get the dialogue going so that they can claim for what they want. All right. Mm-hmm. And if we use that energy to realize that we have to organize for ourselves, and that we have to start avoiding organizing ourselves according to our tribal means, but as Africans, all right, then if that energy comes about and we organize ourselves and we have a vision for ourselves, we have a strategy that we can flash out, then I think the future for Namibia can only be great, all right? And calling out a thing for what it is, all right? Mm-hmm. It's, for example, like Malcolm X, what he said, whatever kind of action to get the things rightfully ours.
Right. By any means necessary.
Yeah. We have to be for that action, all right? And the sooner we realize that, the better our future is going to be.
Do you think what's going on currently in South Africa as far as land reform, or just in general, that was somewhat spill over into Namibia and inspire the Namibian people to be more aggressive in regards to land reform?
Yeah, because like I said, that energy is starting to surge, all right? You're seeing people now starting a dialogue around land disposition in Namibia, around historic interventions. So of course, there's a land reform bill that is coming up. It has started and then it was stopped in the parliament. and people said, stop with it because we don't feel like you have consulted us enough.
What do you mean? Why it was stopped in the parliament?
Yeah, it was stopped in the parliament because, like we're saying, our Black leaders, you know, because a land bill is something that comes about before, like you change, you put up like a policy, for example. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this land bill was stopped in the parliament because people felt like you have not consulted us enough. And there is also a land conference that was postponed ever since last year, and we're hearing it's finally going to happen this year. Mm-hmm. So we want to see what happens with all those type of interventions, and from there, I guess things are going. It's either things are going to boil over or things are going to start to get addressed in a way. But what I can say is that there are groups of people who descendants of the ancestors or who were displaced of their land, and that kind of energy is going on, and we see it spilling over, and it's not different from South Africa in a way as well. Yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a pretty large Black middle class in Namibia, or at all?
Yes. So to say, you can say that the type of interventions that have been put in place with education, for example, and a few affirmative action policies, Black people were able somehow to move along the ladder and upwards to middle income class. Yeah, I would say so.
Let me ask you this. Somebody says in the chat room, the Namibian middle class are not really in a position to help their other countrymen because they are bankrupted by housing costs and debt. Is that true?
Yeah. What has been happening recently, like since last year, there has been a bit of like an economic recession, and what you're hearing, the government is saying it doesn't have money. So a lot of things are not going as good economically wise, and it's putting a strain on individuals, on households and stuff like that. And also last year when we were speaking, I told you about these skyrocketing property prices that are going up because the government has not found a way to deal with the demand of urban land. So that has shot up the land prices, property prices, and so on. So yeah, but we envision for this only to go on to be a temporary thing. So maybe in about 3-4 years, things might change on the ground. Yeah.
So you think housing values are gonna go down over time, or be more affordable, or is it just gonna go up, you think?
I think given that we do something about the demand, because what we have done now is that there is this huge amount of demand and the supply is this small. So if something is done regarding that, in terms of like servicing land, for example, because you tend to hear a lot about that there's no money to service land for a construction of houses to go ahead. So if that is addressed one day, so I hope that it's going to change maybe the property prices as well.
Yeah, somebody said housing costs in Namibia are ridiculous, even for U.S. standpoint. So housing, like, okay, so let me ask you this. We'll say maybe 2 miles outside of Windhoek, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 200 square. I think you guys do square meters, so 200 square meters.
3-bedroom is going to cost you around in a yeah, a 3-bedroom outside of Windhoek, and so to say like middle income, high income suburb is going to cost you like $300,000 US.
$300,000 US?
Around there, yeah.
That's a lot for Namibia.
Yeah, it's quite high, or maybe even $250,000 US.
Oh, good. That's a lot for. I think I want to say real estate in South Africa is not that expensive.
It's not that bad. It's quite like a huge difference. Like I have this apartment. I bought it sometimes last year. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. It's not that spacious and so on. I bought it at around 140,000 US dollars.
So your condo. People were complimenting you on your kitchen. They say your kitchen is very nice.
Sorry.
I'm serious. They're saying your kitchen is very nice.
Okay, thank you. But yeah. So this is what I had to fork out for this type of an apartment. Yeah.
No, but that's you got a very nice kitchen.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's what everybody in the chat was saying. So where in Windhoek are you? Are you like downtown or where are you? What? I'm just asking.
I'm in an I would say middle income, high income suburb. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
So if you're downtown, it'll be you'll be a whole lot more, I guess. Your apartment or your condo.
Yeah. Of course, it will be whole. Downtown is like low income, high income.
Mm-hmm. So we have some thirsty brothers in the chat room. They want to know if you're single. One brother, if you're single.
Sorry, I tend to laugh a lot. Sorry,
no,
but
okay.
I'm not single. I have a partner. Yes.
All right, she has a partner. So brother, so she's taken. All right, so stop being thirsty in the chat room. All right, no more questions. Okay, she's looking for somebody else in her kitchen. All right. So there you go. So how do you think it's gonna, in closing, how do you think all of this is gonna play out? Like what? I mean, are Namibians, are they gonna get their land reform and everything that they want, or is the government pretty much sold out and 30 years from now we're still gonna be having the same conversation?
Ooh. I guess that's a question in everyone's mind, in every Namibian's mind, who sees the type of injustices that are going on. You literally, when you drive across Namibia, all the way from, because in the northern area where you were in Opuwo, that is predominantly like communal land,
right,
predominantly Black people owned. All right.
And Odongwa, I felt like that as well too. In Odongwa, like it was predominantly, you could tell it was Black owned.
Yes, and Black owned. And then as soon as you cross, there is this concept of like a red line, and this red line is like one of the apartheid concept that was put up there to separate the communal areas, Black predominantly areas, from the commercial predominantly white owned areas. Okay, so under the conception of like disease prevention, like animal disease preventions and so on. So as soon as you cross over, what you consistently see is fenced off land, so that it was just the other day when me and my partners went outside, like we traveled a little bit outside of Windhoek to go out for a day. And I feel like I'm so fenced in. Wherever I go, you feel like you are fenced in because the land is fenced from across, Yeah,
and this isn't just fences. This is like barbed wire, like.
It's normal small fences, but you know what that means. When you see a land that is fenced off, and it's on the other side of that red line, then you know that it's commercially owned. And I'm not saying all the land is owned by white people, but majority of that land is white people owned. And what you are saying around these areas is Black people who are reduced to farm workers, something that has not much changed since the apartheid system, where you still have Black people being servants of the white people.
White people, yeah.
So the means of economy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like the video I saw, you're right. Like the fence separated literally the shanty towns from the wealthy homes, like a fence. Like if you had a drone, like to the right, where all the shanty towns. You guys call them shanty towns in Namibia too?
Yeah, yes, informal settlement, so to say. Yeah, we call them that. Yeah, but
Yeah. And then you had like nice houses like on the other side of the fence. It was crazy. Yeah,
that is one of the pictures of the unequal distribution of wealth in Namibia. Like,
so you think one day the people in the shanty towns are going to tear down the fences and just just take over?
I don't know, but what I'm seeing is that I don't know if there's any change without the revolution. So unless if really we, like I said, the blueprint has already been laid out to us. There's been so many people who've written up about Black power, how to go about gaining power as Black people, as African people across the world, you know, but we're not using that. Like Amos Wilson, for example, he wrote a book on the blueprint of Black power. You know,
right.
But
what you know about that? What you know about that? What you know about Amos Wilson and the blueprint of Black power?
Excuse me?
I said, what you know about Amos Wilson and the blueprint?
I know about how his blueprint on how Black people can unite and form relationships so that they can form institutions that enable us to have power, like world power for ourselves, you know. He has written a lot of other books that I have read, like The Falsification of African History and so on, Consciousness and so on. So I know a whole lot. So if we were that serious, that is the kind of agenda as Black leaders or as Black people that we should concern ourselves with, you know.
So
as to bring a real change for our people. Yeah.
So do you think a lot of Africans look to Black American leaders for liberation?
I'm not so sure about that because many of us are still asleep, unfortunately. So it's up to us, each one teach one, for those of us who know, for example. But it's also up to our leaders to wake up from their, you know, I don't want to call them leaders because for me, the current Black leadership is not, I don't know if I would consider it leadership. Leadership for me would be the likes of maybe Thomas Sankara, the likes of
Lumumba,
the likes of, I would say that the Kwame Nkrumah, for example, because those are the people who had the vision for Africa as a united force, you know. So I would say not so many, but a few of us who have a little bit of an understanding, we do recognize that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Nangula. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. You know, thank you.
All right.
You know, I was trying to get people who actually live in Namibia to tell the story instead of having somebody, you know, who doesn't. So thank you for joining us all the way from Namibia.
Thank you so much.
And I still need to come out there. I still need to come back out there.
Yes, you should come. You were saying you're coming this year, or is it next year?
Yeah, I gotta come soon. You know, like I told you. So I came in 2012.
Yes.
Was supposed to go back in 2013, but my flight from Bamako to Namibia, I was flying like from Bamako to
Johannesburg.
No, yeah, Bamako to Johannesburg. It was gonna go from Bamako to Addis Ababa, from Addis Ababa to Joburg, and Joburg to Windhoek. So a flight from Bamako was canceled.
Oh, so
I was stuck for 2 days, and I missed my other flight, so that didn't happen. And then I was supposed to come in 2014. The airport, because I wanted to go to Odangwa.
Oh, okay. They were renovating the airport.
They why do you close? They closed the airport. Why do you close an entire?
They were renovating it. I think they were renovating it. Yeah.
Who closes an airport to renovate it?
I have no idea. Those are things that you have to live with sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So they need to literally close the airport. They're like, yeah, because I kept trying to buy the ticket and I couldn't, and so then I called. What's the airline?
You wanted to fly from Windhoek to Ondangwa.
Yeah, exactly. I called who's the carrier in Namibia?
It's the Air Namibia.
Air Namibia. So I called and I was like, I'm trying to book a ticket, but I can't. They're like, oh, sorry, the airport is closed for renovations. I'm like, who closes the airport for renovation? You leave the airport open.
You could have taken a bus ride.
I just see. when I'm in Mali, the bus ride from Bamako to like where I go to Dogon country is like 8-9 hours.
I took that from Mopti to Bamako as well.
It's like 9 hours. So I didn't want to do another long bus ride. So I was just like, I need to catch up.
I did like a whole bus drive all the way from Ghana to Mali.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Where are you traveling? Are you traveling throughout Africa at all this year?
I'm not anytime soon. Financially, I'm just very trapped in a way. I bought a property and
which is smart.
Yeah.
I can't buy a property. Very smart.
Maybe later on when I become a tycoon, I'm trying to do a small business on a side with my shea butter and other handmade products from Ghana. So maybe when I make enough of killing out of that, then I'll be able to travel again. Yeah.
Yeah, Turkey. They closed the airport for renovations. I'm like, you can still renovate and keep the airport operating. And then the thing about it is the airport in Odongo is probably the size of your apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah. It's just
yeah, so they're probably trying to upgrade it to a much bigger airport. So where did you travel this year?
This year so far in
January. You at the Voodoo Festival in
Uitag? So in January I was in Togo and Benin, and in August I'm going to Nigeria in August. I'll be in Nigeria.
Wow, you're going to Nigeria in August. Have you been to Nigeria before?
First time.
Oh, first time. Okay, great.
Have you been?
No, I have never been to Nigeria.
So I'll be
Ghana, Benin and Togo, no, but not to Nigeria. Yeah,
so I'll be there in August for the Osun Festival.
Great. Okay.
So it'll be so actually I was in Benin sacrificing live chickens. I was. So somebody put that in the chat room. So but yeah, I will be in Benin in August, and then in October I'll be in Ivory Coast, and I'm going to Sierra Leone, and then in October, I'm going to Senegal, and then in December I'm going to Ghana. So
that's great. I would have loved to go up to Senegal last time I was in Mali, but I just didn't have enough time. So before I could think of it, my holiday was already over and I had to get back for work. Yeah.
Yep. So that's about it. But we appreciate you coming on.
Yes, and I appreciate you having me.
I know you have you sell your products. Like where can people find you and you want to buy something and all that good stuff?
Oh goodness, I have all these African necklaces that I have. I'm trying to put up a website and an Instagram. So what I've been doing currently just to trade with my immediate contacts, trying to do the African way of establishing business along relationship lines. Yeah, but I'll try to set up something and share with everyone. But otherwise, I have some black soap here from Ghana, and some of my shea butter that I mixed up with essential oils and stuff like that. Yeah. And what else do I have? Yeah, the rest of my products are elsewhere. Yeah. So
well, as soon as you get your site up or your Instagram up, please let me know. And
all right, I'll let you know
to come on and talk about it, and so people so
yeah, great. Yes, that would be great. I'll definitely do so.
Yeah, but I'll put your I'll put your Facebook in the chat room so people could contact you if they want to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But thank you for coming on. So
thank you very much.
All right.
Well. Bye.
Bye. And everybody, thank you for joining us. Make sure you go to Search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Also go to searchforuhuru.com. Go to africapersonified.africa. Go to amazon.com. Search your name, Dynasty Mirror, buy a book, please. Also go to dynastymirror.com as well. Also go to Africa Personified on all those platforms as well. So till next time, I'll be back on tomorrow. Might come back on tonight. Don't know. But till next time, peace.